On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
People are really what you need to focus on. Simply because if you got a good team on the field, your other problems shrink, right?
Yeah.
You have bad people on the team, those problems metastasize, okay?
That's right.
They compound and you don't know where the next hit's going to come from. Whereas if you really are willing to open up the wallet and invest in good people, it affords you the luxury and the freedom to start working on your business rather than in the business.
You are listening to Gathering the Kings with Chaz Wolfe, featuring fellow 7, 8, and even 9-figure business owners who have real battle scars from business and life, but have prevailed as the king that they are designed to be. We welcome high-performing entrepreneurs to the stage in order to reveal the real of the real on what it takes to build a successful business today. We dissect the good and bad decisions they've made along the way that give a true and accurate picture of the journey of success and how you too can get there. Through this dialogue, you will learn the value of growing your network and surrounding yourself with power players and kings like today's guest. Grab your pen and notebook because we're about to dive in. What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. I'm your host. I've got Brendan McCluskey here on the King stage. My brother, how are you?
Good, man. How about yourself?
Yep. It's Wednesday. How can it not be a great day, right?
Absolutely.
It's another day. We got opportunity ahead of us. I get to talk to an amazing business owner like you. How can it go wrong? That's what always my perspective is. Real quick, actually on that, it's funny. I worked for a guy, Grant Cardone. Maybe you've heard the name. Pretty big guy in marketing and sales. Maybe listeners heard of him as well. But every day at the end of our morning huddle, we would say, someone would be like, "What day is it?" Everybody say, "It's Tuesday." Tuesday was the best sales day. And so statistically speaking, every day we'd say, "It's Tuesday, it's Tuesday, it's Tuesday." So that's kind of how I feel about every day, except for that saying it's the same day over and over. That'll mind trick you.
There you go, man.
I think it's Tuesday. Brendan, what type of business do you have, my brother?
All right. So I'm the founder and president of Trident Builders. We're a commercial general contractor located in Baltimore, Maryland. I'd say we do about 50% government, 50% business to business. And typically we do higher or more complex projects, right? So we don't do restaurants, we do like Ruth Chris's, right? We don't do hotels, we do Ritz-Carlton. On the government side, we're doing a really cool project for the Smithsonian, right? The Smithsonian Institution. Wow. So it's, all it is cottages, but it's passive house. So these things are like net zero energy consuming houses that, are basically at the very technical envelope of what design can do. So it's we like the hard stuff. I'm also a partial owner of a real estate development company called Trident Builders LLC. We're partners with a group called Pimlico Partners that is looking to do a lot of large scale affordable housing.
Love it. Yeah, that's a hot topic, especially in the development world. Mm-hmm. I know several guys here in Kansas City in that space and have gotten some government contracts to be able to build some incredibly large projects. And so that's a very cool space. So I'm thankful that you're here. We're going to get into a bunch of cool stuff. I can only tell from your history here, but at this level in the game, before we get into the nitty gritty, I want to know what pushes you, what drives you. You've obviously had an incredible amount of success. If you're saying, "I don't build hotels, I build Ritz-Carltons," but why though? Why are you still doing it?
Well, it's funny. It's just who I am, right? It's not really a motivation or a goal. It's just showing up every day and leaving it on the field, right? Like, I just don't know how to tick otherwise.
Yep.
And the other thing is it's been a hell of a trip getting to this point. So now that I'm actually in a position where we got a degree of notoriety and brand, right? It's like, I'm finally in a position where I can start inflicting some damage, right? So I'm going to take my shots.
I love that. Do you think that, this is a multi-layer question. Stick with me here. Yeah. Okay. So what you just gave was an incredible answer to me because it's like this level, you see the next shots that you can take and you're like, I'm going to take them. But did you feel that way? Like 10 steps back, looking at the shots that you are taking now? Like, have you always kind of looked at like the next level as like, man, I'm ready. I got some shots. I'm going to take them. Has that always been part of your DNA?
Yeah. But I'd also, if I can offer a degree of wisdom here, right? It's been hard won, right? So definitely my 20s and 30s, I feel as if every time I thought I had it figured out, like the rug got pulled out from underneath me, right? I was working for, the related companies out in Aspen, Colorado on multi-billion-dollar developments. I mean, I couldn't have been any sweeter of a deal. Okay. And then Lehman Brothers, everything collapses, right? So had to rebuild. I go back to business school. I move back to Boston, but at the same time, I met my wife and, here we are 10 years later with a beautiful family. I feel as if every time I thought I had it figured out, fate decided to act like a jerk. And I really kind of reinvent it all. So like now I tend to like attempt my version of humility in how I see that path forming, right? Like, whatever the path God puts in front of me, I feel as if I'm here for the ride. I'm not the shot caller on this. Right. So it's like, I want to be that entrepreneur with vision, but I also want to be an entrepreneur with his eyes open, right? Like, I need to understand that the world around me is still changing, even though I'm attempting to change the world. Right.
Yeah. Wow. We'll have to quote that. It's such perspective. Was that the moment, the rug pulling under you, 2008-9 frame that gave you this like, ooh, maybe I take another look here, now in life?
Well, I was in commercial construction. All right. So when commercial construction imploded, right, in 08-09, there's going to be a couple year lag. So I went back to business school, and like, anybody in business school, you should start thinking about what's the business plan I want to do. Right. And I started realizing that, all right, I guess I'm going to be this entrepreneur. Like I always kind of expected. So I started working on some startups, didn't really make a ton of money, break even, a lot of hard fought, efforts, but not really turning the corner on it. And as the construction industry kind of recovered, I migrated back into the industry as a junior partner with a CM firm. And it's like, I kind of fell in love and knew that like construction is really where I belong.
Yeah. Yeah. To your point, I think that through some of those like difficulties, it gives us the perspective to know not only how to push or the shots that you're going to take, but things to be grateful for. Helps us dial in, I think, especially as we have that more mature perspective, which is really what you've described. What do you think for, like the guy who's listening, who maybe hasn't been through the downturn yet? Maybe he's thinking this 2023 recession, whatever you're going to call it, is his first one. He's in construction. He's like you, but maybe 10, 15 years ago. What do you say to that guy who is built a, maybe a good little business? It's him and maybe a couple of guys. And he's got this chip on his shoulder, kind of like what you're describing, this like, I can defeat everything, and the rug hasn't been pulled out yet.
Yeah.
What do you say to the guy before the rug gets pulled out?
Be humble, right? Because, it can bite you and you don't know when it's going to happen or how it's going to happen. I would lean up, right? Like one of the things that we're kind of positioning ourselves as, like we were looking at explosive growth zone into 23, right? But I'm already starting to see like the storm clouds of the recession, as a consequence of both like the inflationary pressure of commodities, right? Like just the inputs to construction. And I, as the general contractor, I literally buy everything: wood, steel, copper, concrete, all of it. Everything just, has a fuel surcharge as well, right? Between the inflationary pressures as well as like the increasing cost of debt, we're seeing projects that were, bidding in the past summer. Some of them are getting pushed, some are getting delayed, some of them are just getting canceled. Right. So, the good thing is I had enough of a backlog that, going into 23, that I'm going to hit my 22 numbers right off the bat. Right. The problem is I'm not seeing the growth going into it. Yeah. So I have to be conscientious of, I've started to identify some good potential hires. Right. Yep. I got to pause on some of those investments right now, right? Because I don't want to be in a situation where I let them go in 2 to 3 months, right?
Yeah.
And it's just so for that guy that hasn't necessarily been through the spin cycle yet, just figure out where you can pinch and pull and like tighten up your operations. Maybe like put off heavy investments in equipment or any sort of big purchases and just write it out. Like conserve cash, be ready for the fight.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Let's go into practically, maybe in your first couple of early years, I want to know of a good decision that you made in the business that can, be duplicated to the listener. They're taking notes. They're going to write it down. They're going to go implement whatever you say right into their business. What is it that they should go do?
Okay. So like for good decisions?
Yeah.
I'd say, so begrudgingly, I applied to the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Business Program, right?
Yeah.
So I had a business undergrad. I had an MBA. I had almost 20 years of working for some of the best, builders and developers in the country. Yeah, it's $100 million projects and everything else. I started my company. I was getting my clock, right? So I got a call from a woman that was in charge of like community relations for a major developer. I mean, this is a project in Baltimore here called Port Covington, multi-billion-dollar program funded by the Under Armour guys, right?
Wow.
Anyway, she's like, yeah, Brendan, we want you to apply to this program. Now, look, my company's on fire, right? The last thing I thought I needed to do was go back into a classroom and study. Well, I couldn't have been really any more wrong.
Wow.
Basically, what it did is it afforded me the headspace to start thinking strategically, right? And go back to like, where did I make mistakes and how did I get off plan? Because I was more or less kind of stuck in that tactical firefighter survival every day, right?
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking long term. So by going through the program, it kind of allowed me to take a step back, look at what where we had sustainable competitive advantages to exploit those, right?
Yeah.
Get into the market segments that we really thrive at. Okay. And then ditch the stuff that wasn't making us any money. And in fact, that was really transformative. So then the other tidbit of wisdom from that, I would say, is that it changed my perspective, as it did for all the entrepreneurs in the program, right? Like I was in this room with like 30 other entrepreneurs. I mean, like everything you could think of: restaurants, accountants, lawyers, landscape architects, really everything. You would ask that, if you'd survey that group on day one, we would have all said our biggest problem was cash flow. Our second problem was access to capital. And then we have to come up with the third one. So like our people, right?
Sure.
At the end of the program, people, right, are really what you need to focus on, right? Simply because you got a good team on the field, right? Your other problems shrink, right?
Yeah.
You have bad people on the team, those problems metastasize, okay?
That's
and
right.
they compound, and you don't know where the next hit's going to come from. Whereas if you really are willing to open up the wallet and like invest in good people, it affords you the luxury and the freedom to start working on your business rather than in the business.
That's right. Yeah. You said the words there at the end, as far as working on versus in. It dials back to what you said. I was in the firefight. I couldn't get away. I couldn't breathe. Basically, the program allowed you just a freedom of space in your mind to be able to go somewhere where you hadn't been yet, to be able to think. And I think that's just, it's so simple that people miss it, and for myself, even there's so many years, I call it the warrior stage of business, where you're literally in the fight, like the battle, sword, bloody, the whole deal, right? I can't think about anything else.
Go ahead. Well, it goes to your point, right? Like, what you're doing here with this podcast and like the community you're building, it's lonely at the top, right? I mean, like you might have a very, collegial like relationship with your people, but like, you're still the guy that signs the paycheck, right? So when you're dealing with problems, who are you talking to? Right. And
that's right.
And, as much as I love my wife, like, me bringing the stress from work and then dropping that on top of our relationship, I mean, that's a whole other dynamic, right? So, having a peer group of other business owners that know what it's like, what are going through some of the same sort of challenges, or like, hey, yeah, I made that mistake a year and a half ago, right? It's really kind of nice to be able to reach out and have a community of people that kind of know what it is you're going through.
Yeah, 100%. I think that the stages that you're talking about, you find someone who's either been through it or currently going through it, and it gives you this talking point to be able to massage out the actual solution. Where if you don't, the only other option really is just to bottle it up. Like you said, it's lonely at the top. That only lasts for so long before you implode. Let's flip the script though. I want to know about a bad decision that you made, something that just, didn't go so well.
Oh gosh, I made dozens of bad decisions, and I'm probably gonna make some more.
Yeah.
Let's see. All right. 3 big ones, right? I would say that we started out undercapitalized, right? I did the proper thing. I wrote out a proper business plan, had a pro forma, had a budget, right? Launched the company knowing what my target was for capital that I needed, right? And I had less than 50% of what it was I had established. And I immediately got in trouble, right? Because like you don't know where problems are going to arise when you are undercapitalized. Okay. Again, it forces you into like a starvation mode where you're not able to invest in the people, invest in the system. So it made the trip a lot harder. In that same business plan, I articulated what market segments we want to be in and why we want to be in those. And then demonstrating like complete lack of discipline. I was like a dog chaser in the car, right? Any job came by, I was going out, right? Like just, okay, this is what we're going to do. Right?
Dollar.
Yeah, right. Like I was an idiot. And like that was also very painful and expensive to learn, right? I mean, you had a job, you lost, tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars when you have, and that it's funny. I'm almost having a bipolar perspective on it, right? In one moment, I'm like, I can't believe I lost all that money. And in other moments, I'm a little bit more forgiving of myself. And it's like, hey, that was an expensive lesson. And like, I'm only where I'm at today as a consequence of having traversed that. Yeah. But then I go right back to like, oh my God, I can't believe I lost all that money. All right.
Yeah.
And then I would say the last one was a lack of understanding of being a proper boss and like what motivated people, right? Like,
sure.
My entire career, I had done well and people had thrown money at me and it kept me happy, right? I thought that I could do the same. And what I failed to understand is there's some people that just aren't motivated by the same things. So, a relentless focus and care of my people, I think, or the type of people I bring into the company, I think is really, really an area where I did poorly before. I'm doing a much better job now.
Yeah. Obviously all those are applicable, for the 6-figure business owner who hasn't hit that 7-figure mark yet. It's like all of those seem so like regular life to them, right? project to project, chasing job to job, like you said, whatever that is, client to client, whatever their business is specifically. And then, being scared to make the investment in the right people, all of those things. And so I'm reiterating it because I know that's how they're feeling. It's how you and I felt then as well. And there's this click that happens at some point where they hear a guy like you right now on a podcast and they go, okay, fine, I'm going to give it a shot, right? I'm only going to take this one type of project, or I'm only going to hire people that I think are super high quality and the exact right fit. And then they're going to see a result because of something like this. And so I just think it's so valuable. It's just the action between them hearing you and going and doing it for the first time, or maybe a second time because it didn't work the first time. It doesn't mean that you give up. It just means that what Brendan is talking about is right. It's just a matter of you making it actually happen for your business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, Chaz Wolfe here. As many of you know, I have been on an absolute mission to help entrepreneurs from all across the country in many different industries level up their game and grow their business and intentionally connect with other entrepreneurs. We do that obviously through the podcast, but we also have a peer-to-peer mastermind group specifically for 7 to 9-figure business owners. We are bringing some of the best and most successful entrepreneurs and minds together in a regular and a super intentional way to not only grow our network, but to be able to leverage. And at a certain point in business, success becomes about leverage, leveraging time, leveraging resources, leveraging key relationships. This is exactly what we're doing inside of the peer-to-peer mastermind group called Gathering the Kings, specifically for 7 to 9-figure business owners. So if that's you, if you're ready to level up your 7 to 9-figure business even to the next level and get around other big hitters just like you, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com, fill out a short application, and it'll come to an application call with me, and I want to chat with you to see if it might be a good fit. Talk soon. Brendan, what would you say about process? We talked about good and bad decisions. A decision comes across your desk today. How do you process that? Are there steps that you take, things that you weigh? Tell us about that.
You mean in terms of project opportunities?
Yeah, any of the above. Sales, projects, employees.
Alignment. I would say if it's aligning with how I've tooled the company and built the company out, right? We don't have a large self-performance. We have a couple guys on our team that actually swing hammers and do some work. But really the carpenters simply to make my superintendent's life easy, right? So again, it kind of speaks back to the point of my job as the leader is to really provide the resources and tools for my people to be the most successful. But I also don't lose sight of the fact that we are not a carpentry firm, right? We are a general contractor. So we have strong PMs, we have strong superintendents, and I try to make my superintendent's life easy by having a couple handy guys around. But don't start thinking to yourself and don't start becoming a drywall framing company or what.
Right.
These are areas where I made mistakes early on and where I'm being undercapitalized. We mushroomed to 19 people and had all these guys on staff. And I was I did not start a company to do framing and drywall. I started a company to be a general contractor. So for all the way back and rebuilding the company and rebuilding back up was one of those areas where we made a mistake. So the other, so alignment and identifying whether or not it fits within the strategic vision of where I'm trying to take the company. Because of that, there's a metric that I really kind of focus on anything. It's margin. We have just grown our company to be lean, right? In certain regards and be able to compete with bigger firms. And as a consequence, when I go up against bigger firms, I'm able to make greater margins. So those are the type of products we're pursuing.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is having greater margin kind of ices over on the job where you don't make so much, that sometimes they're strategic, because you're trying to build a client and everything else, but or miscalculations or mistakes happen, that margin goes to cover those losses.
Yeah, 100%. The word alignment, I think, is such a great word, and you used it beautifully, but it's not necessarily a word that I hear a lot in business. The right person, right seat on the bus, okay, that's fine. But this alignment really means it could be your core values. It could be your mission statement. It could be, where are we going with this company? And then does this person fit? Does this project fit? Am I doing the right things? Are we building something that I didn't mean to build? I just think it gives this a flowing word, but it's pretty pointed also. It's kind of both and where it's alignment. Are we in alignment? Are we working together on this? Are we headed in the right direction? Are we in agreement? It can just mean so many very, very powerful things. I just love how you depicted that. You want to add anything to that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and again, I'm not, I'm passing zero judgment or having any sort of degree of arrogance attached at all, zero, right? We aren't going to be competitive building Arby's, right? Because the guys that do that do so well, right? Like they have it down to a science. The margins are tight on it, but they execute and they execute and they execute. Their entire company is designed to build Arby's or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever, like large scale franchise like that, right?
Yep.
Where we thrive is where there's an enhanced level of engagement, okay? And we need to always hold the owner or the client's hand for a higher end finish, right? Like we're doing like over my shoulder at the Inner Harbor here in Baltimore, we're doing what's going to be one of the nicest restaurants in town, right? And it's at the Ritz-Carlton. It's going to be this really high-end Mediterranean restaurant, and it's going to be beautiful. I plan to submit an award on it, right? But the guy, I can do that very well, right? I can't go about to do it very well. So, I can do very technical government work. Okay. I can't pave the road at the Social Security Administration, right? Like and that's what I mean by alignment in terms of like, the people I have on my team are very talented at certain things. Okay. They're not talented at others. So I make sure that I'm going after work that fits our skill sets.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and you even hired them specifically to fit the direction that you wanted to go to begin with. So it all should be in alignment.
Yeah. Well, and from an ethical standpoint too, you touched upon that, right? You need to make sure that people have the right professional bearing, right? And the right ethical compass in order to know that they're going to be making decisions that you would support.
Yeah. Yeah. They're an extension of your brand. I want to switch over to the speed round here, Brendan. You mentioned important KPIs. You kind of threw out, margin. I want to, if you could only pick the one thing to track, would it be margin? And then give me a little bit more beyond that, if that's the case, or maybe it's something different.
Yeah. I mean, I would say margin, right? Because it all kind of comes back to that. We in construction, we measure time a lot, but if you're there longer, it compresses margin, right? So it really like the one thing that I care about most, I'd rather do 10% on 20 million, right? Than 2% on 100, right?
Yeah.
It's like the same amount of money. It's a lot more work. It's a lot more risk exposure when you're doing revenue, right? I think revenue is yes, you need to drive that number up, right? You want to get from 6 figures to 7 to 8 and beyond.
Yep.
However, like making sure that you're making margin is paramount, right? There's no point to have $30 million worth of problems if you're not making any money.
Yeah, 100%. And I think so many people get wrapped up in the top line. Obviously, it's what's sexy. It's what we talk about, even 7 and 8 figure, like we were just mentioning. But if you're not keeping any of it,
right, right,
and that doesn't make us bad people for wanting to keep it, right? I think that there's a misconception there, especially even in the trades. I feel like a lot of my clients are in the trades, and a lot of my friends are in the trades, and there's this misconception around money where I don't want to charge too much because then they don't feel like they're doing a service to the homeowner, or they're giving their guys pay, but then they won't pay themselves. And what would you speak to that, just from like such a high perspective that you have in this world of the trades? Anything to share there on that topic?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You're right, because I feel as if sometimes those of us that are ambitious and are trying to make a mint, like we get criticized for it, but like we're also putting a lot out there, we're taking on a lot of risk. And with risk should come reward.
Yeah.
So I think that it's important for us to, not feel as if we're being vilified. I think it's like, look, you can here's the other thing. You can also choose as a business owner, you got an awful lot of freedom of what kind of wants it.
Right.
For example, right, we got 2 products we got in planning right now. One of them, I love both of them. One of them is, there is a guy in Cherry Hill, which is like a socioeconomically like depressed area of Baltimore.
Okay.
This guy runs a football program, for kids, right?
Yeah.
A lot of these kids have broken homes, right? They're like, the family situation is a little bit rough. Maybe the dad's missing. This guy's using the football program as a surrogate family, right?
Yeah.
And get these kids, the football players, make sure they're not messing around on the corners and, getting into trouble, getting into violence and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
It's phenomenal what this guy's doing. Well, he had a contractor half build a clubhouse where they were going to use, for looking at film and, doing laundry, make sure the kids have a place to eat, do some tutoring and study work, make sure that they, get their grades up, There's a contractor ran out on this guy, and you take on a job like that because it's like, all right, look, I own a construction company. I don't need to necessarily make money on this thing, but I see a social need, right? This guy who's out there in the streets and keeping these kids alive, right?
Yeah, literally.
He needs help. Right. So you take on a job like that because it helps us provide a sense of purpose. And in fact, it really resonates well with our staff and in our team, right? Because we're building projects of distinction and, usually higher end stuff, but by taking on projects that have a social need, right? It it gives it enhances or reinforces that sense of purpose of why we're doing this. Like, why did I start a company? Right.
Right.
You know, another one that we're doing is it's a homeless shelter for veterans out in the rural part of Maryland. Right. So, you know, again, why am I missing out in the sticks? Right. Well, because there's a need for it. And like, no one else is capable of doing it. We're able to do this effectively at cost.
Right.
And, you know, it has a great end solution and it gives us a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
I think we as entrepreneurs, like, you know, if I make money on other jobs, but it helps me do that good work elsewhere.
Yep.
I take no shame in that.
Yeah. Well, I think even matching these two things together, what you were just talking about as far as specifically making margin, right? Making profit, and then being able to pay your guys to go do a project for a thing that you're not making any money. The only way that that's possible is because you made money on the other one.
Correct. Exactly.
And so if you don't make the margin when you need it, or when it's plausible, it's not like you stole from this guy. You provided a great project and he is probably happy that he paid you that much. And then you're able to utilize that as the influencer in your community, which is what a king is. And you just transition that over to another project that you're able to help this other, you know, social need, which I just think there's just obviously so many benefits to that. But the connection here between margin and being able to serve others, I tell my teams all the time. I'm, you know, whether it's in my franchises where we're selling, you know, $80 fruit baskets, it's like, guys, if we had an average ticket of 150 as opposed to 50, there's more for you, more to do cool stuff as a team, more to give away when we sponsor families on Christmas. Like, there's just more. It's not like me necessarily needing to take more home. There's more for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And, you know, and not for nothing, like even the clients that I'm building, like these restaurants or hotels and support, they themselves have businesses that, you know, got them to this point, right? They have the money. They got it from somewhere. They themselves, you know, made margin somewhere. It's a virtuous cycle.
Exactly. What do you think would you recommend as like a resource, book, podcast, something like that for an entrepreneur who's looking to grow their business?
No, that's a good question. You know, I read a lot, but I tend to read everything, right? Like it's not just always business related. Like I try to like just suck in as much information as I can.
Love that.
One book, it's somewhat atypical. It is business related though. It was a book called Extreme Candor. Have you ever heard of it?
I haven't actually. Who's the author?
God, I can't think of her name. She was like an HR bigwig, like Wizzo for all the big tech firms, right? So like Google, Facebook,
sure,
Microsoft, and you know, it's doesn't really apply to what we do for a day to day running a small business, right? It's just not the same. Like, you know, big tech and what we do is dissimilar. Save one real critical component. One of the things that she was always hypercritical of is that often, especially in like technical areas, people would get promoted into management roles, right? They might be a really good coder or a really good engineer, but like as a consequence of their competency, they would push them into a management role. Well, management skills and technical skills aren't totally necessarily transferable, right? And the fact of the matter is, like, you know, to dumb this down, it's like you're taking like, you know, your star first baseman and putting them in the outfield. Like, why are you doing that? Right? Like you keep people that are really good at their job, they're passionate and they're happy, you know, allow them to kind of plateau where they want to be. Right.
Yeah.
Again, give them the resources and support. It's, you know, everyone does not need to be on a cycle for promotion and advancement. Like, and having that sort of conversation with people, I think is really important.
Yeah.
And another book that I read, it's a little bit dated now. My old boss of mine had me read. It was called Beyond Belief. There's a lot of wisdom in that book, but one kernel of knowledge that I liked in that one was, you know, checking the ego and like understanding what is driving people. And I have found that time and time again, like especially in negotiation, how powerful of a tool it is.
Oh yeah.
What do I want? Stay focused on that. Do I need my ego strokes? I don't need my ego strokes. That's not what this is about. We're kings, right? Like I don't need that affirmation. I already know it. Right.
Yep. Exactly.
It's more of what am I really after? And so often people do leave their ego or their vulnerabilities rather than focus on what their goals are. It's really powerful to, you know, focus on what you want and just be, you know, laser focused on getting it.
Yeah. That's so good. It's all the things that we've heard, but hearing them again, maybe hearing them in a slight different way from you today, hopefully is changing somebody's perspective. What do you think about intentionally networking or masterminding with other entrepreneurs?
I don't think there's really any sort of substitute for it. To be perfectly honest with you. Like I said, like,
good way to say it.
Yeah, it's lonely at the top, right? You know, you don't really have a peer group in your day-to-day workforce, right? That you can kind of talk to. Like we talk ultimately about our problems, but like, there's something I can't really talk to my people about, right?
Yeah.
The other thing
Yeah.
is that there's wisdom to be shared.
That's right.
Yeah. So I think that it's where we all taking this on is a step above and beyond like the normal social pressures of a career, right? Like we also have to be good, fathers and husbands, brothers, and sons, right? Like we're juggling all these other roles as well as being a business owner. And I think being able to talk to people that understand the enhanced level of stress and burden that we've taken upon ourselves, I think there's really no substitute for it.
Yeah, I like what you just said there because it doesn't come up on the podcast a lot. It comes up quite a bit in our mastermind group, but this connectivity between all these different things that we do. Yes, we're a business owner. We're here talking about business today, but like you said, we're husbands, we're wives, fathers, mothers. As entrepreneurs, all these other things also. And so the business affects
all of it,
and or vice versa. All of it can affect the business. And so it's different than just clocking in, clocking out at a job where you can kind of mentally leave that. It's a whole nother living, breathing thing. And they absolutely are either flowing together or they're not. One's building the other up or it's not. And so I think that's just a really, really good point that you brought up because a lot of people just right here, I'm laser focused. I'm going to get $1 million or $10 million or $100 million. And they kind of just like forget about all the things that come along with that. That they need to focus on also. It's not just about the money. It's not just about the family. It's got to be about both, or it's got to be about the other things that we even like the community involvement, the social things that we're involved with. Like there's a lot of things inside of a kingdom and we have to be aware of those things because we're the only ones that are paying attention to all of them together. So it's like our duty actually.
Yeah. Well, and you spoke perfectly to it. Why am I getting involved in these community projects? Right. Well, it's like, if not me, who, and if not now, when, right? Like all of us tell ourselves like, oh, when I make it, I'm going to give it back. Right.
Right.
Well, what is making it? Like, where do you find success? And what if you never get to that number? Like, do I need to have $18 million in an account, right? Somewhere to have made it. Right. That's a false scoreboard. Right. And if it's anything I learned, like living in places like Aspen, doing the ultra wealthy kind of development, there's a lot of unhappy rich people. Right.
Yeah.
So like, yes, be proud of that number and focus on margin. Like I'm not going to like contradict myself, but at the same time, like identify what it is that makes you happy and like, who do you want to be? And what's the change you want to see in the world? And the fact of the matter is, you start a business, you've also given yourself a degree of freedom that a lot of people don't have. So, be creative, figure out how you can bring what your services and your business is to your community and just solve a problem. It doesn't have to be a big one. It doesn't have to be all of them. Just figure something out. Like just push the country in the right direction. And like all of the small business owners have the freedom to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. The freedom and the choice. I think that it's responsibility, duty, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
And man, you can either do it or you're not. And some people unfortunately just kind of crumble. But if you can tie it back, basically what you're saying, to these other things, as the fuel, it gives us then the longevity or the persistence to be able to, press through some of those moments. I've got one last question here for you, Brendan.
Yeah. What's up?
I want to know if you could whisper in the younger Brendan's ear, what would you say?
Say, don't worry, not a thing. Every little thing will be all right. They'll figure it out. Like there are definitely times earlier in my career, I was concerned, I was worried. I'm not missing the mark, even getting into construction, to be perfectly honest with you, like a lot of my buddies ended up in like financial gigs and stuff like that. And here I was like putting on boots, I was wearing a tie, but I was at a construction site and, loud noises and everything else. And I didn't know if I was making a very deep and sad decision, right? If I wasn't thinking this thing through, but here I am, 20 years down into my career path, I have a business, I have a beautiful family, I'm doing fun, interesting work. I'm like, dude, you'll figure it out.
Yeah. I love that. What do you say to the guy? One other question actually that just popped in my brain. Talking about the trades, like this difference of you wearing boots, but yet a tie on the job site. What do you say to the guy who maybe it's all he's known and maybe he feels like he started the business because that's all he's known and he's never felt maybe worthy of something more, right? But we know that actually it's a huge opportunity right now. What would you say to that guy who maybe doesn't have the confidence to put the tie on with the boots, in this example?
Well, I mean, definitely know your worth. There's dignity with all one.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And, the fact of the matter is I have a heck of a lot more respect for, a lot of the trades guys that, bust their butts every day, that wake up early, stay late, and really build the world around us.
Yeah,
Than,
really.
the guy that is, spamming me with emails every day, right? Like, no, that guy's not, what is he contributing? Nothing, right?
Right.
But that electrician, that HVAC guy, that, that drywall framer. I mean, you want to talk about a tough job, like, pumping sheetrock upstairs all day long, that's hard work. So take pride in what it is you're doing and be proud of yourself and know that you're actually somebody that's making a positive difference.
Yeah, you said it. If not you, and now who and when? And I think that both of those apply to really to all of us. So thank you for that. But specifically to the guy that's in the trades, man, if there's ever been a time, it's now.
Well, yeah. I mean, the average construction worker is like 46 years old, right? Like, there's just not enough of us, right? And so like the market's ripe for innovation, but there's upward pressure on wages all the time. Trust me, I'm seeing it on the other end, right? I'm the business owner sometimes my margin's getting compressed every day. But yeah, like, be proud of what it is you're doing and like, know that, like that sort of work's not going anywhere. Like I think AI has all sorts of potential for disrupting a lot of sales and engineering jobs, definitely, white collar jobs, but someone's got to go out there with a pipe wrench, right? Like that's not going away.
Very good. Well, Brendan, how can the listener find you if they're in the Baltimore area? How can they solicit maybe a project from you? How can they just want to reach out and maybe pick your brain?
Yeah. Probably the best way to find me and track me is LinkedIn, profile Brendan McCluskey or Trident Builders. But yeah, we're, tridentbuilds.com is our website. There's all sorts of ways to contact us through that.
That's awesome. Well, you've been incredible here today. Such great feedback and just honesty. Just really, really appreciate you sharing. Of course, just the time that you've given here, I don't take lightly, and I hope the listener doesn't either, but we appreciate you being here. Blessings to your family, blessings to your business. And again, just thank you for being here.
Yeah, likewise, Chaz. Best to you and yours. Have a great way, and thanks for the opportunities.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.